Welcome, everybody. Thank you for attending and spending time today. Really excited about this. When Gemma approached me, I don't know, 6 weeks ago about doing a webinar, we started putting our heads together on who did we think would be the greatest minds to bring together collectively about this exciting new role, the Success Planner. And we are lucky enough to be joined with Claudia and Jake, and I'll let them introduce themselves. But for those of you in the audience, this is the Success Planner webinar, and we're going to take you through a definition of it, talk about the impact it has on business as a whole, holistically. I'll show a few slides around kind of where it lives in the customer life cycle, and then we want to have a real interactive type of session. So we should have plenty of time at the end for Q&A, and I'll try to be managing and kind of watching the Q&A as well as the chat. So if you have anything, feel free to throw it in there. And like I've seen done on a lot of webinars recently, it's great when people go into chat and just say, hey, this is Aaron from Portland, Oregon, which, by the way, that's where I'm dialing in from here today. So before I get too far ahead of myself, I'm going to turn it over to Gemma to introduce herself. And I think that slide moved forward. I hope so. Gemma, I'll pass it over to you.
Thanks, Aaron. Hi, everyone. I'm actually joining in from Boston, Massachusetts today, despite my English accent. I talk to people from London and the rest of England pretty much every day still. So yeah, that's me. I work at Decibel, where I head up global customer success. We are a SaaS business, and I'm responsible for all of the non-technical teams for customers post-sales, so including traditional customer success management, insights and education services, as well as success planning, which is this new department that we're going to be talking about today.
And Gemma was the one, so I actually met Gemma, Claudia, and Jake Dunlap through the power of social media and LinkedIn specifically. And so Gemma and I got connected on LinkedIn, and we were talking through kind of how she runs her org and what we do at Success Hacker, and she started telling me about the Success Planner. And so Gemma's going to tell us real world experience of implementing this position, hiring for it, and what the impacts have been around doing all of that. What are those outcomes that she's seen? So I'm super excited. Gemma, thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us, bringing me into this. I have just begged, borrowed, and stolen every idea I have around the Success Planner from you, and I appreciate you being willing for me to do that. If you are, I guess. Jake, I didn't have any text for you, buddy, so you're just gonna have to free flow on this one.
All right, man.
Introduce yourself.
Team didn't get you a bio. That's all right, man. So what's going on, everyone? I'm Jake Dunlap. I'm the CEO of Scaled. Former VP of sales at Glassdoor and a few other startups. And, for me, in relation to this conversation in particular, look, I've never been a VP of sales and not been the VP of customer success too. Meaning if I can't control the entire customer experience, I'm not interested. And because it creates a holistic view of the customer that I think we're kind of missing today in the sales org. So we work with modern organizations that are trying to optimize sales, demand gen, customer success processes, and looking forward to, kind of talking through what we're seeing in the market. Also hearing from the other panelists on, what's the latest and greatest, and hopefully adding some value here as well.
Awesome. Yeah. And, if you aren't familiar with Scaled, check out Scaled Sales Consulting, all things acquisition through life cycle, as Jake said. And we kind of reminisced yesterday about the first time we met in person.
Yeah.
At Dreamforce. And I didn't even have a Dreamforce ticket. I'm one of those people who just goes because there's 200,000 people in town. I post up at a coffee shop across the street and I see who I meet. And I was walking through a park and lo and behold, there's Jake. And so I stopped and we did a quick little video together. After that, let's see, it was barbecue.
My team never stopped giving me shit about that. They're like, oh, you're Jake from LinkedIn. They're like, oh God. Like somebody's recognizing him. Like, here we go.
Oh no, right. As though the ego needs any more boosting.
It was great.
And then I'm happy to introduce Claudia. Claudia, please feel free. That was a lot on your bio. So I tried.
You were supposed to take out the bits you like best, because there isn't much I haven't done. To be fair, I've got Decades of experience. I basically did my degree in languages and linguistics. So the first few years, I did everything from renewal sales to business development to technical support. I've lived in Australia, Costa Rica, all over Europe. I've managed Southern Europe, Northern Europe, and everything in between. I'm really passionate about driving customer experience to the point of view that I want to work for companies that deliver an experience that I would like to receive. And I'm pretty particular about the experiences that I like to be involved in. So at the moment, I am helping IFS. I started there in November, and IFS, if you don't know who they are, with challenges to the market in enterprise software. We've got offices all over the world, and we help mainly companies that manufacture and distribute goods, maintain assets, and manage service-focused operations. So it's very particular, the verticals. And I basically on board just doing a lot of grassroots stuff. So pulling together everything to do with business transformation. I am their VP of business transformation. And what does that mean? I am helping post-sales with the knowledge management strategies, making us more agile, more customer-focused, and helping bring to the fore voice of the customer program, and putting together, helping our organization piece together a customer success organization and helping that run with support. So this is of great interest. Thank you so much for inviting me today.
Oh, thank you for joining us. And yesterday we were talking about kind of some of the changes in business and what that means from a business transformation standpoint. And it turns out a lot of companies are really paying attention to that voice of the customer a lot more right now. As new customer acquisition becomes more and more difficult with budgets and economies getting tighter, everything that we do post-sale from an expansion and certainly renewal perspective becomes more and more vital. And so it's sort of interesting to hear from you, Claudia, that that's really becoming the focus, and all of a sudden more and more organizations are really paying attention to that VOC.
I should also mention that I am in the UK as well. I'm not just a British person masquerading in the US. I will be representing EMEA for the purposes of this call tonight, if that's okay.
He's taking shots at Gemma.
I know.
Shots fired. I love it. All right, yeah. Well, I was lucky enough to be in the UK. I was in London in March for a customer success conference, and I got home 2 days before there was the quarantines and 16-hour wait lines and all of that. So the last trip I took was the UK. I can't wait to go back. So a little bit about myself and Success Hacker. If you're unfamiliar, we do training, certification, the world's only accredited certification in customer success. And we focus that enablement, and we have a platform, and we do it in person and self-guided and all the things. All my contact information if anyone's curious. And I'm going to show you one of the pieces of intellectual property that we teach that is specific to success planning as well. But before we get too far down that road, the agenda, kind of what we're going to look at over the next, 30, 40 minutes or so. We're going to go through and define what the success planner role is and what an ideal candidate skill set of this new role looks like. We'll talk about how to outline the success planner and how that relates to CS, customer success, CX, customer experience, support, sales, and the enterprise as a whole, and where that sort of having this new role will help, should help remove some of the friction points across the organization. And then we'll talk about what it looks like specifically for those handoffs, variable compensation packages, what we can do in the top of the funnel to better align with what we deliver at the bottom of the funnel. So I'm going to just go briefly through an overview of where customer success, the discipline, historically has resided. And originally, where we impacted revenue in CS was all around the renewal. And so it was all about retaining the revenue we were given. Fighting churn was a big focus. And then as we became more and more sophisticated as an industry, we were able to start moving out of just, so that's your land and expand. You got your marketing at the top doing demand gen awareness, sales in the middle there with the green around the evaluation and decision making. And then some subset of those prospects and leads will become customers, and then they get into the bottom of the funnel there with activation, et cetera. And so when we look at where customer success is moving and where I'm seeing it as an industry move, we're getting out of the bottom of the funnel. and no longer just specific to post-sale back of house activity. And that's what got me so fired up about this role that Gemma has implemented, and why I've been basically beating this drum ever since. Because what we need to do as an industry, and whether it's account management, client success management, whatever, but the sooner we can move the people who deliver the value, i.e. at the bottom of the funnel, up into the funnel. And I'll let Gemma explain what this 90% probability to close looks like and how she executes that in her organization. But when we start doing that, now we just automatically create a better experience, to Claudia's point, and removing some of the friction of the handoffs, to Jake's point, around from sales to CS, ops, implementation, whoever is there. So what I recommend we do is we evaluate our prospects by way of the success planner when they are evaluating us. And that allows us to right-size contracts, tack on professional services, add training, premium support, whatever options we have in our toolkit of ways to right-size, so that we have an intelligent service model, that we aren't getting a squeaky, bad fit customer that takes all of our time. That's what we're looking to eliminate for ourselves. And then for the customer, it creates a better alignment around the outcomes and the objectives of what they want. So what that then ultimately should create is an equitable two-way street, where we've got our risk and overhead alleviated, and the customer is getting everything that they're looking for. One way to do that, our success plan canvas, we've got this for free. So anybody who's attending today wants one, email me or reach out on LinkedIn, and I can get you a download and instructions and kind of an overview of how to use this canvas as part of your success planning activity. But that being said, all right, if that's where we live and we're moving from the bottom into the top of the funnel, let's define what the success planner and an ideal skill set looks like for people who do this. So no place better to begin than with Gemma, who has implemented this in the real world. So Gemma, kind of walk us through maybe what the process was like to even determine, man, I should make this its own job function, and then going about hiring and filling and what this person does all day.
Yeah, absolutely. So the business case, that we came up with for creating a success planning function came down to really looking at the reasons for customer churn, and also looking at what is impacting deal velocity. Now, for any SaaS business, those two metrics are incredibly important. So in looking at both of those things, we saw that actually we had in some instances won the wrong customers, which obviously is rule number one of customer success. And in other scenarios, we weren't clearly able to define, why that customer had purchased us. And there was maybe a hope that the customer had that they would be successful, but not a clear path. And, every customer buys something with a hope to be successful, but it's really your job, if you want to renew them, to make that hope a reality. So in looking at those two things, we realized that we had a little bit of a trust issue with customers. And I think part of that has to do with, we focus on enterprise customers, and we are a startup, right? So they're very well known, we're not very well known. So how do we do such a strong value sell and such big enterprise order values if we have that trust issue? And that's where the idea of the success planning concept came in. Because if we can provide someone whose sole responsibility is to create a clear, supported, and defined path to success for the customer pre-purchase, so ideally when they're at that verbal commitment stage, around 90% stage close, the customer is now able to say, you know what, not only do I believe in their tech, but I believe that they're the team that are going to help me be successful. So it de-risks the decision and has helped us improve both deal velocity and retention rate as a result. So that was kind of how we built the business case for it.
In the amount of time since implementing it, what kinds of increases in those metrics have you seen?
Very good results. So with respect to deal velocity, we saw that improve in the first year, I think by a 10% reduction, which is quite significant when you have, months and months and months of a sales cycle. Frees up more time for your sales reps to go and hunt for more new business. On the retention side, it has taken longer to see the gains, because obviously you think a success planner is focused on coming in pre-purchase, and most contracts are going to be 24 months or 12 months. So you've got to wait a little bit longer to see the results on retention there. But the past 2 years, which has kind of been a full sales cycle, we've seen a 15% increase on retention points.
Wow. So yeah,
and I'm talking gross retention here, not kind of net retention. So
yeah, just talking about GRR, right?
Yeah.
And so your retention rate went up 15%. Your net new velocity, deal velocity, went up 10%. So
decreased. I mean, sorry. The velocity got faster. The time decreased.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Went down. Sorry, I should say. Yeah. Faster deals, not slower. Hopefully. Yeah. Although that's a concern probably that Jake, do you see that maybe? Like the concept of like, whoa, you're going to come into my deal now.
Yeah.
90%. Like, what are your thoughts on that? And then Gemma, like, what kind of hurdles or conversations did you have to have internally to get sales bought in on this? So let's start with Jake on kind of.
It's a fallacy that a lot of sales reps are just, and it is completely false. There's a lot of actually data about like the amount of people that you involve from your side and likelihood to close as well too. There's a book a gentleman wrote called Deal Storming, where he did a lot of research around this. And I think that the fear is that anyone talking about the implementation is going to make it sound complicated. The reality is, instead, what they're going to do is demystify it for the customer. Your customer may have never bought your tool before, or maybe they have, but they don't know how to collaborate internally to get this thing done. So the concept of bringing CS forward in the process is not. It is just genuine best practices for any type of deal that has any amount of complexity, because it demystifies it for the customer. It's a better customer experience because then they know what to plan for. It smooths everything out. So if you're in sales, leverage the success planner role, leverage your CS org, because I'm not surprised at all by Gemma's, data here that we've consistently seen it speed up deals, especially when things are even, remotely complex.
Interesting. And so Gemma, what was that like to broach that subject internally?
Yeah, so the business case is really around the metric side of things, but then there's also the change management piece of like, not just from a process perspective, but from a cultural perspective, how are we going to change people's mindsets here? So on the change management side, what we did was we kind of did that whole freeze, unfreeze, and then freeze again process. So freeze what we're doing now without success planning, like what's going well, what's not going well, like make sure we really have that defined and understood across the whole business that there are challenges. And then the unfreezing piece, what we did was we said, okay, let's bring in senior leadership together, show them what our experience looks like for customers, from, person on the street to customer advocate who's kind of shooting t-shirt guns with our logos out onto big crowds of people. Show them the things that they have to go through to get there. And now let's come up with a better idea, one that we think will, reduce risk and get them to that stage of advocacy faster. So in that process, it was really important for leadership to identify what the different life cycle stages are for customers, agree on those definitions, agree on the emotions that the customers feel at each stage, and actively come up with ways to placate those emotions. So, it could be, I don't know if I can trust these guys pre-purchase. And then at the onboarding stage, are they going to make me look bad? So with success planning, it was just so evidently clear that we were going to improve the lives of our customers in doing that. But that top level agreement was super important. And then coming back to freezing success planning it was really a lot of repeated enablement. So a salesperson is going to think, how can this be, how is this going to help me? How is this not going to be sales blocker, number one, kind of thing. So you really have to explain to your whole team the reasons why you're doing this, the metrics that you're looking at, and how it will benefit them as an employee of the company who wants to grow so their lives can also improve. Yeah. But also, storytelling, in addition to the metrics, has been really helpful. So one of the things that landed really well is getting your whole commercial team to think about your product as really merely a vessel, like a backpack, right? If someone could buy a backpack for 1 million different things. You could buy a backpack to climb Mount Everest, and you could buy a backpack to cross the Sahara. But the things that you put inside the backpack, that takes some knowledge. It takes people from the bottom of the funnel, as you were saying earlier. And that's really what a success plan is. It's providing a lot of that intel that oftentimes you find out about too late and you wish you knew with hindsight. So yeah, I think, the change management piece, the storytelling, and then consistently sharing wins and learns. So you've shared the success plan canvas there. I would say our success plan templates have evolved many, many times. They're all available on kind of shared templates across the business. There's workflows and tasks set from them, but they're constantly adapting. It's not like a set document. So it adapts for the customer, but it also adapts for the business as your product offering changes over time. And we regularly review
the maturation, right, of the customer within your own ecosystem and as they move forward. But you had mentioned some metrics and some making the life better, really kind of honing in on the customer experience side of it. And I think that's a nice segue over to Claudia around, as a business transformation expert and the vice president thereof. What are your thoughts around CX, support, sales, everybody else? How do you see this possibly, hopefully, making everyone's life better if we're doing it right, both external customers as well as internal?
Yeah, I was trying really hard not to interject there and just let everyone have their say, because what I was thinking about is when I'm being brought into these opportunities, for which I've had many over the years, I often rely heavily on the voice of the customer to sort of give insight and then build business cases internally for change, which anyone that's ever done anything about CX knows that that's the usual way of starting. So for me, I think it comes down to when you're really mapping out your customer success life cycle, you understand that moment from pre-sales through to sales, and then everything that happens post-sales, which I know that you were referring to as value. There's a million different versions of them out there, but these stages are fairly constant. And what tends to happen is there's this kind of chuck over the wall once the sale is closed.
Yeah.
And that does, the voice of the customer insight indicates two key things when you start surveying or you start gaining insight once a sale has closed. And one of them that customers will say over and over again is that the expectations set during the pre-sales and the sales phase have not been met. So when customers do that, they kind of dishonor their own brand, because you're already putting your implementation team on a back foot, because they're now having to run after all of these expectations and these promises that sales have put for a customer that may not even be the best fit. So even if you work 3 times as hard and you invest all of your top tier implementation people to get this customer live, there is a high probability because from the get-go, already the trust isn't there, the trust hasn't been built, the trust was never recovered, and so the customer is always going to be on that clunky bridge towards the end. So there's a chance and a risk of jump there. So I was really also thinking about, from the voice of the customer, that idea that not only are you setting yourself up for failure, but by plugging in customer success at that moment, not so they're there being the teacher in the room, but you're also allowing that, you're taking down that wall completely. You're plugging in this invisible barrier that appears in organizations between post-sales and sales. For me, by the way, it never exists, because I've worked both sides of these, and I think that the qualities that you find in the people that can run both of these functions within businesses can do so very well if there's a decent amount of collaboration. And what it actually shows is a really strong front internally, not a siloed front, which is what happens when there's this wall. So plug in post sales into the pre-sales cycle, and making sure that all that great intel that you glean when you're trying to create your proof of concept, or you're trying to go in and create that business case to sell your product to the customer, is captured and then analyzed by someone that can say, okay, so 1 year down the line, what will that look like for the customer? 1 year, 2 years down the line, how will the return of investment look like for the customer then? That kind of concept is where I see a massive advantage in having this kind of role.
And it seems like Gemma's actually seen quantifiable positive outcomes for the sales team, faster deal times, higher conversion rates, et cetera, by implementing this. And then, you know, obviously I'm sure it was a bit of a heavy lift, but then from that point, it sounded, Gemma, correct me if I'm wrong, but you're kind of using it, to Claudia's point, as a differentiator in that pre-sale part of their life cycle.
Yeah, totally. I mean, you know, customer success can mean so many different things in so many different companies, and I think it's really hard to actually know what you're getting, who you're getting into bed with. So the success plan just provides all of that clarity. Not obviously, there's your objectives and your KPIs, and we need to make sure that we've got the most up-to-date objectives and that we're measuring them with suitable KPIs. But there's the team and the milestones that need to work together, that two-way path to success. I would say just something which Claudia brought up around, you know, sales kind of throwing grenades over the fence, and then see us having to catch it. I tend to think that, well, at least in my experience, salespeople don't want to do that. They don't want to throw grenades. They want to sell to customers that are going to be successful, and they want to ensure that they're going to get a great reputation out of selling to that customer. It's just they don't always have the time or the know-how to set them up for success, because you know what, that's not their job. So
but also they may not be enabled or have the correct insight, so they tend to have playbooks that, and that's another thing as well. We, in organizations, we start creating these playbooks, and the audiences of these playbooks are for our sales organization, and the audiences of these playbooks are for our success organization. But actually, if we view it as just one organization, where the combined experience of these two functions is written into one seamless playbook, you dispel the myth of the grenade. Yours was far harsher than my version, by the way. My analogy was far more peaceful than that.
I will say that aligned commission and rules of engagement are highly important. I know Jake's going to talk about those, but that also can definitely enact change quickly.
Yes, yeah. And I think as well for the success managers, so just thinking about pain points that I find through the work that I do as someone that transforms businesses. So seeing when you're in a startup, I've worked for startups before, and creating something that is new, you can think outside the box, and then you can bring to fruition these ideas. But quite a lot of the time when you're working for organizations that have these very inbuilt structured ways of doing things, then it's a really big change management task, and there's almost more of a business case that you have to pitch before you can even think about, first of all, changing the minds and the hearts of the people that you already have, but also then thinking, how are we going to find the right new pieces to bring in that are going to help be the catalysts for change? And I feel that the planner, when you, for example, in IFS at the moment, we have split our support organization, and we've now created the success and support is run parallel and report into to the same leader. But that's been a big transformation piece. And now we have to think about, okay, we have the right people. We need to make sure they are enabled. And that was really what I was going to about the intel. If the planner gets put in, it's almost like that then becomes the catalyst for this new group of people that are turning into those farmers rather than the hunters, if they've come from a sales background or wherever they've come from in the organization. And you're allowing them to piece together things that traditionally may not have been captured anywhere concrete for the customer success.
Yeah, and then the concept of outcome related sales and stuff is, I mean, that plays right in with this as well, right? If we're bringing in a success planner and we're closing deals around the consequence and the outcome of the product, not the product. It just makes it that much easier to deliver those outcomes. So as we look at that and we talk more about moving this into sales and up the funnel, I'm going to kick it over to Jake here for our third kind of main topic. We can vet this out a little bit, and then we do have some really good questions that I want to make sure we have time, and I will come back and address each of them. Some of them are targeted at some of you individually, and but before we get there, so let's look at what this would do for sales. You know, obviously Gemma's seen some really quantifiable positive outcomes for the acquisition, new customer acquisition side of her business. But what about variable comp? How would you align this so that the incentives are properly aligned and you can actually bring in salespeople that are used to getting all the commission with the big ring of the gong when they, you know, sold back in the day, and now with repeatable revenue, maybe it's a little different on their variable comp. Jake, what thoughts do you have along these lines?
Yeah, sure. And I'd love to hear what Gemma, what they did as well too. For me, a lot of both Claudia and Gemma, a lot of the issues with it's logical, right? Like if you do what's best for the customer, you focus on them becoming a power usage, like it's good for the business. The problem is when every single person in the value chain has different KPIs, it becomes infighting and not intentional, but unintentional infighting. If I, as a sales rep, if I see no penalty or no incentive to, and again, it's not that I don't want to throw a grenade over, but if it happens, it happens. If I get 100, you know, if I get a deal in, you know, like if I have to like just, you know, be like, oh no, that's easy. Our customer success team is world-class. They're going to take care of everything for you, right? Like it's just going to happen, right? And it's the same thing, you know, if you think about whenever SDR's hand leads to sales, it's the same thing. I'm incentivized to jam this through because that's how I'm KPI'd, that's how I'm measured. And that's why I believe this success planner, but at a more macro level, somebody has to be KPI'd, and then therefore that trickles down around the complete customer experience from marketing touch point through renewal and growth, right? And the big issue as I see is right now, every group is siloed to go from here to here to here to here and here to here. And so therefore, because the comp is that, and nobody is siloed, the only person that is this is usually this, if you have a CRO or maybe the CEO is the person, or COO, right? But it goes back to what I said when I was introducing myself. For me, if I don't control the whole thing, I don't want to be a VP of sales, because then I can think about it holistically, think about it big picture. I have no incentive to throw grenades because it all impacts me. And I feel like if you're trying to implement a process like this, it all sounds great on paper. Of course, yes, better customer experience, et cetera. But if you don't think about whether it's actual incentive or bonus or some element of usage as a part of a salesperson's comp, I think it's very difficult, and sales leadership comp, right? Again, I cannot tell you how many startups I see where the VP of sales does not control success. It's a peer of theirs or they're parallel. And every single one of those organizations has the exact problem we're talking about, because nobody is up here. Nobody is either compensated or KPI'd against the holistic number, except maybe the CEO. And that to me is the mindset. If that doesn't align, all of this, it just sounds nice on paper. If you can't try to align roles with KPIs that extend past their little box, it's going to be very difficult to implement. And Gemma, I mean, you can talk about what you all are doing, but again, I'm a big fan of tying some element of compensation for sales to actual usage as opposed to just, you know, deal close.
Yeah. I love that idea. You know, what we did at the start of launching success planning and the success planner role was we actually looked at the CS team and said, hey, you guys get paid on retention, 100% of your comp is on retention, but what about if we take 30% of your comp and make that what the sales number is? So if sales do really well, customer success also does well. So that's a different type of compensation to think about. That it's not always about sales compensation. It's about how are you going to make sure that your CS team opens up with all the glorious case studies and anecdotes and amazing things that your customers have done to help your sales rep sell more and sell more confidently. So that's something we did at the start to to drive a better relationship between sales and CS, and really show success planning as an assist to the sales rep, right? It's assisting you to increase the order value if you can. And on the sales side, we incentivized, and we still do, the multi-year kind of extended contract as well. So there's a benefit to selling to someone for the long term, and if they renew, there's some kickback there. What we've done slightly now is we've slightly changed it a little bit. So the CSMs, instead of being comped on what sales do overall, they're comped on the individual upsell number. But that's just because our retention rates have improved, and now we're looking to improve that kind of upsell, cross-sell aspect of what we're doing.
So they've got a variable comp that they get. They get a spiff or some sort of incentive when they expand accounts. Do they have a quota though? Do they have a number of account expansion that they need to hit? Like, ergo a stick instead of a carrot.
Yeah.
Is it all carrot in your organization, or is it both?
Yeah, for the upsell piece, yeah. So there's basically a higher marginal rate paid if the closer you are to quota.
Okay, yeah. So they get a bonus, but if they don't hit a certain number, do they get in trouble?
No, the focus is on retention. I think with any CS team, if the focus isn't on that gross retention, then it's not really a CS team. It's a sales team masquerading as.
We see that a lot. I always motivate leaders to have a blended number, sales and CS. And we talked earlier kind of about the personalities of people in CS and sales and how they're really not that different. We find a lot of people coming to customer success from a sales background because they just got tired of having a number. And so then they're really hesitant to take on any kind of number, even a retention number, because they're like, well, that's kind of why I got out of sales. I like the people, I just didn't like the quota. So sometimes that's an uphill battle in our industry, but I like to see a blend between retention, obviously, and there should be a quota. Like when I came in as the head of CS the first time, I said, if I can't get this churn rate from 40% down to under 10 in 12 months, fire me, because whatever I'm doing is not working. So that's one thing, right? But then on top of that, I said, but if I not only do that, but I also generate net new, like CSQLs, customer success qualified leads through advocates, that means I've made our customers so wildly successful, they're bringing us net new leads and we're closing those at a high rate. I want a piece of that, variable compensation. So no quota associated with it, because then that would misalign my organization's incentives. Now I'm actively farming the account like an account manager would. I wanted to passively detect for those opportunities and then tell the appropriate stories and negotiate and be able to surface that up as a net new lead or expansion opportunity. So I wanted variable comp around that, but I didn't want a quota, because I felt like if I have a number I have to hit from an expansion perspective, to your point, now I'm just a sales organization.
Yeah. I think honestly, if anyone is trying to get into CS to get away from a number, it's not the right thing to do, because CS is there to prove value first and foremost for the customer, but also for the business. So you have to show that you're proving that value through a number.
I think even with the support organization, there's still a number. There's always a number, as long as it's based on outcomes and not activities, and you can promote it in a positive way. I mean, another flip side from the CX world is if you are managing your customers as assets. So that's just looking at raw customers in, customers out, and then any upsells or downsells, and then putting the dollar value to that, which then, because some organizations have difficulty, IFS is a good example. We're moving from on-premise, which is more of a traditional model for software sales, to SaaS, where churn is really familiar in anyone that has been born and bred on SaaS. But if you are going through this kind of hybrid piece, it's more difficult to try and really quantify your churn, and therefore you have a group of CSMs and you're trying to put some kind of outcome related target against them, and it took a long time for us to say, okay, what would be fair, but what also would create the right behaviors that we're looking for, and really prove value to customers. So the asset one is also something that I think promotes the right kind of feeling.
Let's talk about that, because we have a question in the Q&A around how do you basically quantify the qualitative, right? We're always trying to do that in customer success and get out ahead and be predictive with health scores and, you know, expected retention. So the question is, can you talk a little more about taking emotions to tangible metrics? How do you quantify an outcome delivered, for example? And I'll leave that up to any of you guys who want to jump in.
I mean, a success plan is a great starting point, right? If a success plan objective has not been met or is delayed, that's definitely a flag. On the flip side, if it's been met early, or if it's been met with great improvements to a KPI that it was supposed to improve, then you've got your outcome proved, you've got your ROI proved.
Mm-hmm. And so what are some of those in your world that you see, Gemma, that are some of the quantifiable outcomes that you can put in a success plan as an objective and definitively say, yes, we did this?
I think it really depends on what you're selling, right? So it depends on what your product is, what the use cases are for your product. You know, for our product in particular, we're looking to help our customers have a better understanding of digital experience on their website so that they can improve conversion. So okay. The objective would be, you know, we want to improve conversion on our checkout flow, and the KPI would be conversion. That, you know, what that is in that flow. So it's that's an easy example, but then obviously I think the challenge with the success plan in making sure the success plan can help you with that ROI calculation is not just on understanding, okay, what do you want to do, but how are you currently measuring success against that thing that you want to do? Because most of the time your customers don't already know where they're measuring it, or they can't potentially measure it just from your product or your people alone. So it's going kind of round the customer team and almost recruiting people who weren't maybe part of the original decision to purchase to provide that information. If you can do that pre-purchase, it's brilliant, right? Yeah. Instead of having to catch up, mid-subscription.
I think that plays into, I think it's a really good point. Getting the multiple champions, SMEs, power users out there, pushing that adoption, managing that change. And I think that's right in line with what Jake's talking about, incentivizing around usage and adoption. And maybe you can speak to that in what you do from a consulting standpoint at Scaled, and how you guys come in and help organizations make that shift, if you will, or that pivot.
I mean, I think you actually just teased to it. We're trying to push all of our customers to have some type of, we'll call it power usage and then power usage. You have to think there's really 3 stages of a current customer: onboarding, using, power using, right? And you just go back and to understand what that delta is then you reverse engineer what are the actions we need to take for somebody to get to this metric of usage, which is like, maybe it's, and again, each business, as Gemma said, each business is different, right? So it could be X% of people using around X, or X% of whatever it is. But I think everyone needs to kind of map, what are those metrics? What actually moves someone from being onboarded to a user, and then from a user to a power user? So to me, again, it's just looking at your best fit customers and how they got there, and the customers that are in that stage, and then reverse engineering from the success plan. It's like, great. So we know, in this stage of the customer, we need to be focused on these 3 things, 1, 2, 3. And then once they're here, I need to be focused, me as a CS person, I know that if I want to get 25% of this org, these are the 2 or 3 things that I can do to pull that lever. So I think each business is different to really understand what that is for your company. But that's where I think more CS orgs should be aligned to is how do I move these people and then sustain? Then it just moves into a loop of what are the 3 or 4 activities I need to be doing on an ongoing basis to sustain and really kind of simplify what the role is. And then what that looks like to your relationship to the customer through their life cycle. So how about for companies like Claudia's that maybe used to, or even still do, reside in the on-premise product era world where we don't have engagement statistics like we do with the as a service models? We can't focus on customer engagement the same way. What are some tips or tricks for anybody in the audience that's living in that on-premise world? I was just going to follow up.
I was just going to agree with Jake actually there. So do you want to just give your experience, and then I can?
No, it's all good. No, I was just going to add, there is a metric, right? Again, it could be that if they look at their customers, the best fit ones, they did these things. So it doesn't really, you know what I mean? Whether it's a one-time sale or not, or it's only renews every 3 years, there's still a pattern of what good customers look like. And you look for that.
There's a few things that we're doing, and obviously the adoption and the number of transactions going through the system, the active usage, these are all the places that we will get to at a certain point. I think right now we're having to be somewhat more creative, but to Jake's point, I think you can still, if you are regularly working with your customer, you can actually work out, is this system sitting redundant somewhere, or do you have a number of people that have gone through training? How many of your guys are certified? And one of the areas that I'm particularly focused in is really addressing the advocacy piece. So in today's world, we're doing a lot of tracking and tracing, but how often do we really leverage that in business? Now, when we talk about advocacy, that probably comes to mind, you've got marketing chasing down someone for Gartner Insight report or some case study or something for the 10th time this year. For me, advocacy is trying to get that quantifiable evidence, because everyone in this room, and I'm sure everyone on this call, when you're going out to look for something new to buy, you will go and ask a colleague if they can recommend someone. But how often as a business do we actually record somewhere that lead came in through a recommendation? And that recommendation was from an existing customer. And how is that existing customer behaving now? Are they trapped? I.e., when you move off premise, and as we're going through a transformation to SaaS, are they going to jump ship? Are we honoring the advocacy that they're demonstrating to us now by making sure that we're not giving them a bumpy ride? Or do we not recognize that because we do think that there's this barrier between the on-premise and SaaS? And actually, they've given us maybe 10 leads over the last year just from the fact that they were happy at a particular moment in time, now moving towards trapped stage because that experience is deteriorating.
Yeah, I mean, it goes down to your market, what your competition looks like. I use the telecom example a lot. Right? A lot of people hate their cable and internet provider, but they're stuck with them. And so until there's some opportunity for disruption, they don't have to worry about customer experience because they're the only ones delivering the outcome.
Yeah, totally.
Exactly. So, or anyone, we had a question around some metrics, and we've talked about a few, but maybe we can be really specific with some tactical metrics. Question out here around what metrics would the success planner supply a prospect that differs from a technical SME or sales rep or sales engineer, probably? How does that change the customer's world in that pre-sale verbal commitment, 90% probability to close, working with a success planner versus just how we've always done it in the past?
Yeah, so I think, if you think of a standard kind of demo process and discovery process that any sales organization worth their salt will have, they're interested in this. These are their pain points. These are the use cases that are most applicable to them. But it's just more the capturing of that information and then taking that information and really drilling into, but how do you actually measure this now? And if you can't measure it with us, maybe this isn't going to be the best thing for you to put your money into. That kind of conversation is where the success planner is almost challenging the customer to really think about whether this is the right fit. So that's, I think, the big difference. It's not just in, talking about it, but actually saying, okay, but then where does that data live and who's responsible for it and who has access to it and how often is it reviewed? Do you review it on a quarterly basis? Does it go up to the board? Does the CEO have a view? It's those kind of questions that are going to be absolutely crucial for the customer success team so that they can take that and in the first executive business review with the customer say, hey, here's what you told us, here's what we did. Now, how do we need to change it? And kind of rinse and repeat.
Yeah, really like project management 101, right? Like
absolutely,
you have the milestone the KPI that you can quantify. How long did this process take to implement?
So, Yeah, so we, at the same time of implementing success planning, we also kind of rebranded from traditional account management to customer success with a focus on kind of pure retention. And we split out sales and allowed sales to, you know, continue to sell and upsell to customers. That was previously done by the CSMs alone. Now it's done as a tandem job. So I think it was about a 6-month process to make that whole transition. Within that, we hired the success planner, I think month 1, and by month 3, they were going in and actually starting to build out these success plans. But how we focused their time to begin with was just in going through voice of customer data, like Claudia was talking about, churn data, sitting on calls from kind of all sides of the commercial org, and really getting a good feel for what kind of things to look out for, what kind of things could create a risk further down the road that is best addressing head on and upfront.
That's actually a great segue into the next sort of part of the same question. What are some unforeseen roadblocks or complications that you had in rolling out this role that you didn't, like, if I was going to go implement it, what did I know? You know, what do you wish you knew then that you do know now?
So I think at the time of putting the business case together and kind of, you know, going to get finance approval for creating this new role and this new function, I kept being asked the same question. I wish I did a better job of addressing it head on, because it actually delayed the process a little bit. I said it took a month to get the success planner in from when we started the rebrand. And that was a lack of understanding on how this is different to a pre-sales or to a technical role, right? Because, you know, they sound very similar. You can have a pre-sales department that really focuses on helping your sales rep do the right demo and helping, you know, triage very specific technical questions to the customer when they're not yet in customer support, because they're not yet, they're a prospect, they're not really a customer. So that's a super important role, as is kind of anyone who's technical who helps with the implementation side of things. But they are not success planning, because success planning takes into account technical requirements. And there obviously can be a big blocker to success. So they need to be aware of those and know all the nuances of those. But they're really focused on the outcomes piece. So they're really focused on the outcomes piece and the project management side. Yeah, that was one of the things that I think I probably could have done a bit better to made it faster approval process to build the department. Now it's like, it's not questioned. That's just not questioned anymore.
Yeah, well, once you've got the proven track record and you have the higher conversion rates and the faster deal times, all of a sudden everybody's going to be on board with it. But getting them to give it a shot. Claudia or Jake, have either of you seen something like this? But you know what? I'm not going to roll it out to all of my organization. I'm going to do a little pilot with my net new SMB clients or something where it's a little less risky to try to prove out the outcomes, and then I can take it to my sales leaders. You ever see that being successful to do that? Or do you have to go all in to really see the impact of something like this and what it might have on the business? I'm going to leave it up to both of you to interrupt each other.
You're going to pose me? Okay. I mean, for me, I'm just thinking that whenever we've pitched this, it's had to be a unilateral role, even though we may be really targeted in a specific area to start with. One thing that comes to mind, particularly within success management, is the idea of the sort of the low touch organizations and how you might want to call the role something slightly different from the success manager role, because you success managers you want to keep to a certain tier of customers. And being in the tech world, we have the concepts of the support packages and the SLAs that they're on, which then don't compete. But again, that's why a success planner role makes sense, because you can make sure that a customer sort of sets themselves up for the right support package level that will support them in line with the commitments and the expectations that sales have given them in terms of the rollout and roadmap, which then helps with the adoption piece later. So I think in terms of roles, there's some degree of pitching needed and maybe some change in terms of the leveling according to the kinds of customers we're looking to set out. But usually the role is for everybody. They might just be called different things. That's my experience.
Yeah, I think a lot of people can also say, well, why does this have to be a role? Why can't your CSMs just do it?
Yeah.
Right.
Or my account managers or my sales.
Yeah, or equivalents. And it's kind of like, well, they could, but what is their focus? Is their focus on having an SLA with a sales rep to improve deal velocity? I don't think so. I think their focus is going to be on retaining and growing their existing customers. So you find a CSM who's stressed out because they've got a customer issue, and then you're asking them to come onto this call and do success planning. You might not get the best result from the success planning call.
People say that about business transformation all the time.
Yeah.
Like, well, isn't the leader supposed to do business transformation? Why do we need someone that does that? And actually, my role was created out of the need, and I think that I can imagine the conversations that the person that I report into had around why we needed someone to enable the transformation. I suppose the planner is the same thing.
It's also really easy to think like, oh, we'll add it onto the CSM because they're going to work with the customer at the end of it. Mm-hmm. But not every customer is going to close. And as anyone who's, Jake talks about the kind of the commercial manager looking at CS and sales, you always want to think about, how can I get more from my people? How can I get them to do more with less? For me in particular with CSMs, it's how can I give them a bigger portfolio to manage so I don't have to hire as many people? And the success planner helps. It helps, increase the dial, because at least I can say that as a CSM, I might increase your book of business by 20%, but you're going to get a better book of business than you would have before.
Economy of scale too, right? If I'm doing the same thing, that's why I'm always a big fan of nuanced job roles as much as possible. But in the last couple of minutes, because I'm going to be super diligent about this and make sure that we're conscious of everyone's time, I'm just going to toss it around. Jake, you got any final thoughts either on what we were just talking about there, comp, usage comp, Austin barbecue, or anything else?
I'll talk brisket all day long. Well, one, I mean, what Gemma brought up is spot on, meaning like that's how I've always done it, is just brought CS forward, and the issue that she mentioned is always what ends up being an issue. So that's to me is like why I'm sold on this. For me, look, I think there's a lot of success professionals on here. The only other thing I've added that we haven't touched on is that part of CS's job isn't just to focus on using the product, that it's also to understand their business. And my number one piece of advice for any CS person is, I feel like CS right now over indexes on product knowledge and under indexes on business acumen. And so on top of all of this, I would encourage all of you to start to become stewards of your clients' businesses, not just their usage of your product. And that's how you can actually drive real success plans, not just product usage success plans. So.
Amen. Yeah. Taking a consultative approach is a big part of our level 1 certification. It's right in line with that. That's how you can become that trusted advisor, regardless of product usage. So, Claudia, any parting thoughts here? Other than, I just want to let everyone know that that's literally like your backyard on that behind you there. That's a real picture from where you live, which is.
Yeah. That's opposite my house. I've talked a lot. I feel like. I have always lots of ideas, but that's why I'm in the role that I'm in. I love Gemma for coming up with this. I think when I saw the spec and with the challenges that I currently have, it makes a lot of sense. I'm a big advocate for trying to get over that idea that we want to create this collaboration. We want to continue to find ways to build trust with customers and not break trust. And this really just buys into that whole concept. So in terms of reducing effort for the customer, to not have to walk into the first meeting with their customer success manager and have to repeat everything that at some point they already had with their pre-sales and then their sales and then their implementation people. That would be a major plus for whichever customer listening post they get hit by as their next one. So yeah, great talk.
And then Gemma, final words. Thank you for sharing your expertise and all of this with us, by the way. This has been incredible. Thanks to all three of you for making time.
Yeah, it's been a great chat, and you know, I'm very passionate about this department. I've seen the results firsthand, and I'm happy to share any more information with anyone who needs some help.
We're all on LinkedIn, so you know, if anybody needs any of us, that's where you can probably find us.
Yeah. Way better than TikTok.
Better than TikTok.
LinkedIn.
I never got onto TikTok. That one I never could.
Yeah.
So just let's see, final sort of slide here. If anybody wants to learn anything more, we always encourage everyone to be a unicorn at Success Hacker. That's what we believe. We're all unicorns. You just need the right tools. So you can find us there if you need us. Thanks again to the panel. You guys are awesome. I owe you all unicorn t-shirts if you would like one. Let me know and we'll get one in the mail to you. And have a great rest of your week. Stay safe, stay healthy, and hang in there.